അതെ. ഇന്നലത്തെ ആ പൊട്ടേറ്റോ കറി ഉണ്ടല്ലോ ചപ്പാത്തിയുടെ കൂടെ എടുക്കാൻ അല്ലേ?
I am muting everybody. Chandramohan sir, you may please unmute yourself.
Done. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is a very special day. This is the second episode of India Writes Back. It is a conversation series that we have initiated with a lot of very important writers from all over India. We call them the so-called subaltern writers, but they are already the mainstream writers. Their voices are heard loud and clear, and the condition in India is changing a great deal. Today, it is with great pride and privilege that I invite to this gathering of a lot of people here in YouTube as well as Zoom, the much acclaimed and much published poet from Kerala, Chandramohan. He is also a friend. Chandramohan is a person who has really spoken loud and clear against a lot of atrocities that have been happening in our society. Apart from that, he is a person who has come up from a very ordinary writer to a writer we all look up to and read. And now he's on a special project in the UK. It is with a lot of great pride and happiness that I talk to you, Chandramohan, today.
Thank you so much.
So to start with, I'm sure a lot of you in YouTube and Zoom, you know Chandramohan already because he is much published. But there may be people who do not know you very much, Chandramohan. Would you please start by talking about yourself, your journey as a person and as also a poet? How did you start writing?
Yeah. So thank you, dear Kalyani ma'am, for the wonderful introduction, generous introduction. So briefly about myself. Initially, I was like a science student or something who was not into literature, but maybe I was like into reading. I can just claim that I used to read like general articles, not really literature. So maybe I was like trying to participate in one of the protests in 2010 or 2011 when I tried to write some placards, like in a big chart paper, people write whatever they want to write, the slogans kind of thing that should be put up. So I used to write, I was like writing writing those things, and then slowly, I got into writing a few lines, and then it having these lines having an inner meaning, and etc. etc. All the world of literature was was a totally different world for me. I didn't know that the written word, like fiction, stories, poetry, or whatever, or articles have so much power to influence people's minds. Was not really aware of that. It was by pure coincidence or accident that I forayed into writing. Secondly, I felt that there was a time when I used to be kind of an activist. I used to be initially in Ernakulam before I moved to Trivandrum. So that kind of life, in which we engage with issues politically, one is like drifted into writing. That's how I got into writing. So it was by coincidence or something, like when people ask some kind of artist, how did you get into this art? They give this answer that in the art form chose them rather than they choosing the art form. So I think most of the writers, it's like a coincidence, or like by chance, or like I don't know. People are like certain circumstances like push them into this kind of happy predicament, something like that.
True, true. What
Yeah.
about, is it only poetry that you write? Do you write prose? Do you have
No,
plans to write
yeah, I've written some
novels?
articles. Yeah, I have written
Yeah.
op-eds, sorry, some articles in Times of India, Frontline, and all. But those will be categorized as non-fiction. So I aspire to write short stories, but I've seen certain poets, they try to foray into prose, and they are very good prose writers. I've seen very good short stories written by good poets. But or maybe that the I don't know, people think about revenue or employment or something from the written word. So literary agents ask them if they can write a novel and if they can be marketed worldwide or something like that. So in that way, I have aspirations to write prose, but poetry will always remain my first love. Yeah.
Ah, since you mentioned literary agents, what was your experience with publishing? Did you have struggles to get published?
Yeah. So I published my first book. It was like a self-published book in the year 2014, I believe. Yeah, for 14. And there was a press by name Authors Press. But then by that time, self-publishing was like very common. But had I been started writing 10 years before, publishing would have been a major obstacle. But
Yes.
nowadays, maybe for bad or word, good or words, I'm not very sure. It's relatively easy to publish and make your voice heard probably. But I don't know if how hard it is to enter the discourse or to engage with a deeper the deeper nuances of being a writer, etc. But
Right.
relatively easy, it's easier now than before to get published in terms of merely producing a book, if that's what publishing means. Yeah.
Ah, yes. Dear friends, one of the most well-known poetry collections of Chandramohan is Love After Babel. And Babel. And that is why we termed this conversation, Is There Poetry After Babel? And Babel is about the difficulty to make oneself heard and the difficulty to communicate. So even though it was relatively easy for you to get published, is it really easy for you to communicate with the readers? Do they understand
Yeah, yeah,
you?
yeah. So the thing is, in that way, also probably, maybe I belong to a very, very lucky generation. So in my generation, social media like Facebook was very prominent. So so my understanding is that if somebody is a really good poet, let's say somebody who's not that well known, but he can just write something, after a lot of editing in Facebook and say copyright his own name, and then it might reach where it should reach. Somehow I feel, so the social media with no centralized editor. Those entire social media like Facebook or wherever, all these blogs, they have no centralized editor, and this has
Yes.
helped marginalize voices a lot. A
Mhm.
lot of activism of the queer people, of the Dalit Bahujans, or whoever are the Muslims, whoever are fighting against the dominant and oppressive political structures. They use
Yes.
social media, internet, all these technology to their benefit. So in that way, it's not that difficult to uh, get a reach. At least reach out to a lot of people. But
True.
for further aspects of denting the discourse, that is something that's still a challenge, maybe.
I remember for the past 10 years, I've been following you in Facebook.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
been reading. I remember a lot of your poems first came in Facebook, isn't it?
Yeah, true,
And
true,
since you
true.
mentioned the Dalit Bahujans, there are very powerful poems that you have written about these lynching and suicide, Dalit
Mhm.
suicides. I remember one of the best known poems that you have written is definitely Killing the Shambhugas. And
True, true.
you have also used a lot of myth and ancient history to talk about them. Can you please throw light on this theme that you have explored?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that when English is such an empowering language, there is a huge amount of cultural history that we inherit. People who are in various activism, people who are from a particular marginalized identity, they inherit a lot of cultural history, notions of images of culture, that can be used in their fight for cultural justice. So in that way, I believe any kind of myth is like I don't know, it's like an allegorical is an allegory of a battle, the myth Ramayana or whatever. They could be like an allegory of oppression of a certain kind of people, which could be, it's for the intelligent, discerning reader to, to decipher it. So in that way, all the myths can be like, what is it, recast in a modern setting. I remember Paul Sakare has many stories set in biblical settings, biblical settings, which he has like subverted. He has subverted the Christian faith or like questioned the Christian faith. Paul Sakare has done that, and there are, I believe, stories by a lot of Malayalam has a long tradition which myths or already existing imagery or already existing canonized uh, notions are subverted, and new kinds of whatever new kinds of cultural texts are produced. I believe people who are maybe students of English literature may not be so aware of, say, P.K. Balakrishnan, who has this novel by name Ini Njan Urangate, which is like a Mahabharatam rendered from the perspective of Karna.
Yeah.
many like that. I believe I've seen a lot of sessions in many literary festivals where this is being like thoroughly explored. For example, one of the best English poets from Kerala, her name is Kartika Nair. She has a collection by name Until the Lions. So Until the Lions is like a short form of the African proverb, which is like until the lions write their own history, the glory of the story of the hunt will glorify the hunter, something like that. So it's like the first line from that, and it's like a re-rendering of Mahabharata using 19 marginalized characters. It's published by HarperCollins, and it's one of the major, very good collections of English poetry to emerge from writers with Kerala origin. There's a lot of history. So this kind of thought process definitely inspires me. So I have tried to like, what is it? Mix certain Afro-American imagery and Dalit cultural struggles, or look at the past, look at certain instances where the atrocity of Shurpanaka, of a woman who expresses her desire. So how a woman's desires was like silenced in Ramayana, or like all these aspects. There's a tremendous scope to
Hidimbi, you've
try
written about
to.
Hidimbi also.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like maybe an identity which is not so familiar, like maybe of that of a tribal woman who's like, I don't know, like she's presented as vilified and, I don't know, demonized her. So it could be it reflects the ethos of the day, which we can subvert today, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and myth is not just myth. Myth is history, and
Yeah, exactly.
especially in the case of writers from the margins, poetry is history. Dalit
True.
autobiographies, Dalit poetry. It's a documentation of history, it's a retelling of history. And incidentally, that is again a very important theme in your poetry. I found this very beautiful expression, powerful expression, the sterile and synthetic history that you write against.
Mhm.
I have noted down that poem here. I loved it. It is called
Mhm.
history, I think. I write poems in a language not sung at my cradle. What songs will be sung at my grave? Words scrubbed and sanitized clean for a sterile and synthetic history. I found it very powerful, just 4 lines, but
Mhm.
very, very powerful. You have also written about so many atrocities of contemporary times, contemporary history. There is a poem called Rape and Murder of a Dalit Girl, which was very important. And you have not really confined yourself to Dalit issues. You have written about a lot of social movements like gay rights. Irom Sharmila poem that is there. You have written about globalization, capitalism against capitalism. So I would say this is sheer history, more than poetry. I mean, you should not relegate poetry that is political and powerful, written from the margins, into being fiction, into being something romantic. But it is just history, isn't it? Yeah. So
Yes.
how do you choose your themes? Do they just come to you? Do you do a lot of research on them? Do you carefully craft your themes so that they will become a larger picture? I was interested when I looked at all this.
Yeah, a mix of all these. Some poems come naturally in terms of a beautiful phrase that I want to write it down. Some are like, I try to write as if a prompt has been given to me, but it's only by luck, or by kind of divine grace, or whatever, that if something is written and it's worthwhile. If the poem, that's a major thing, isn't it? People are more interested in the poem being a poem rather than the issues being spoken about, right? So craft precedes content, something like that.
Yes.
That's one thing. Secondly, I've seen a lot of poets in Indian. So English poetry globally is like very, very nuanced, very advanced. I've seen a lot of Afro-American voices, Caribbean voices who study certain very specific, very selective aspects of history and develop a very new cultural text. I've seen
Yeah.
like I believe all the students are familiar with Derek Walcott, who has a collection by name Omeros, in which is a retelling of the Homeric myths set in the Caribbean.
Yes.
There are a lot of poets have done. So there is a recent T.S. Eliot Prize winner. His name is Jason Allen Payson.
Uh-huh.
So he's like a French origin, but he's a Caribbean origin, but he had his schooling and college and all in France, and he's a faculty in the UK. So he has a collection. It's called Othello, self portrait, which is like he looks at the Othello from a new perspective. The as some kind of violence on the Afro American soul or the black soul, etc., which was like very acclaimed work recently. So all these are like, all these are like beacons of light I could look up to, for me to write something new, something that has not been thought about before,
Yes,
or
yes.
even if they were thought about before, to produce them, to render them on the page with an evocative language, something like that.
And being a teacher of English literature, it was a delight reading through your poems because there were so many references, not only the post-colonial writers. You have written a poem called Ludwig Wittgenstein. And
Yeah,
there is a short poem that you remember. Do you remember? Lips Turn the
yeah.
Wheel of Time, where you have directly
True, true.
referred to T.S. Eliot. There is an epigraph taken from T.S.
Yeah,
Eliot.
true, true, true,
One
true.
poem is called Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Claims of
Yes.
that.
So
Yeah,
I feel
true,
like
true.
you're really placing yourself in the
Yeah,
tradition of
true,
English literature and consciously, imbibing elements from various Indian writers and English writers. It's marvelous. You don't just
true,
fall into a tradition. You don't just naturally somehow get stuck somewhere. But in your case, and in the case of all subaltern writers, I guess they consciously place themselves in the tradition. They choose their influences. It's brilliant.
true, true. That's true.
uh,
That's
yes, and also I found some very indirect connections also. I don't know if I'm right here, but
yeah,
there is
yeah.
a very famous poem, Telephone Conversation by Wole Soyinka.
True,
Your
true, true, true.
poems, there are some train poems that you have written on
Yeah, 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 yeah,
encounters and caste
yeah, yeah,
theme in
yes, yeah,
trains.
yeah,
Caste in a local train where
yeah,
that
yeah.
you're making that man say, "What is your caste?" in the poem.
Yeah, true, 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 true. But truth be told, this poem was inspired by the game of cricket, and only later I discovered that Wole Soyinka has a similar poem. Similar poem.
Ah,
Yeah, I've seen this is from real life experience. And suppose if your name is Kalyani Valad, so there is no some kind of surname attached. So
yes.
people are curious about that. So they might ask some roundabout way questions. Like without
I know.
overtly.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
really
Yeah,
happens.
it's
Yes, I
yeah,
know.
it's very common in South India, but North India, people have like the full name might people might even address each other by surname. They will say Mr. Ji
Yeah,
or Tiwari Ji like that. So that's straight away a caste name. So there is nothing to ask. But then
right.
these kind of thing, I used to find very fascinating. So there was this interview of Wasim Akram, the great Pakistani bowler Wasim Akram in BBC. So in which he
Yes.
had as I don't know, some simple question was asking. He had made a comment like this: first I try an out swinger, then I try an in swinger, then if I don't get a wicket, I try Yorker. Something like that. He was just being
Same thing.
comical. I don't know. He doesn't get wicket like that, but he's just saying that I'll try these techniques. I'll see if when the ball swings out, if he adjusts it, he'll get caught out. If it's in swinger, he could get LBW. Or if nothing works, sir, I'll try Yorker. Maybe he'll get clean ball. So something like that. I did try. What is it? Drew a parallel to a line of questioning.
Uh,
Something like
for
that. Yeah,
for the
yeah.
sake of our friends who are listening to us, who are not aware of what is happening in the poem, once again, let me clarify. Our poet or the persona is traveling in a train, and another man who is obviously of upper caste because of the caste marks that he is wearing, he's asking, so what is your name? And then what is your surname? What is your father's name? And finally, what is your caste? Because that's what he wanted to know all along.
True, true, true.
I also found a very great resemblance to one of the stories of R.K. Narayan, where you have the other side of it, the Dalit. Sorry, the upper caste man, the Brahmin, is looking at a Dalit and he is using very casteist references. There is a very, very important story in Malgudi days. Yeah.
Oh,
It
that's
is
news.
from the
That's news to
Brahminical
me.
point of view, of course.
That's news to
Yes.
me. Yeah.
Now, since we talked about literature and English literature and all that, have you consciously developed a style of your own? Or does it just naturally come? What do you think of the way in which you write, the style?
No, I believe, so the writing is all about editing. Otherwise, we are just making notes. So the thing is, like we first write out what we want to write out, then many, many layers of editing, working on the text is what makes a poem a poem, if at all it's a poem. That's what I thought, like it's about reworking the draft, how many ever times you can do. And, but I generally believe that when you read widely, good language might naturally come to you. That's one step. Secondly, working on your text infinite number of times will, just like this proverb goes, practice makes man perfect or something like that. It eventually finds its level. Water finds its level.
Right.
Something
Wow.
like that. Yeah.
Just
Mm.
in a sweep, you have given all of us who are listening to you the two important tips to be a good writer. One is to read extensively. The other is, of course, to write and edit, revise infinite number of times. That's brilliant. Yes. Now, all your poems are a kind of social satire. You have obviously, which is related to the theme of caste, you have talked about religion. And that too very powerfully, not only Hindu religion, but also Christianity. I just love that poem where you're calling Mary the feminist. Virgin Mary, you're calling Mary a feminist. And can you again talk to us more about the poems where religion comes and what is your
Yeah.
take on it?
Yeah. So what I felt was that people who are engaged in various kinds of struggles, there is something very common to them. We can always connect one struggle to another struggle. Something like the patriarchal, very patriarchal, capitalist, and caste structures. They have common enemies. More irrespective of caste, an assertive woman, a woman who is a high achiever, a woman who has her own autonomy, autonomy in all aspects of her life, is a threat to patriarchy, is a threat to caste system, is a threat to in any kind of oppressive structures. So there is a natural ally she finds in Dalit Bahujan struggles, and all these struggles find a kind of ally or a what is it, a source of new ideas in queer struggles, where notions of gender itself are are made much more fluid, etc. So look at the kind of very casteist remarks or against R.V. Ramakrishnan. So those kind of things, like discrimination based on color, or so women might be suffering more than men or something. I don't know, but I'm just saying, all these things, there is a tremendous scope to learn from each other, or learn from other struggles. So in that way, I used to believe that there's a lot of something like a multitude of struggles that have a what is it a similar objectives, like they are like aligned, politically aligned in similar ways. So in that way, so I used to feel feminist struggles against patriarchy, or the struggle of the proletariat against extreme forms of capitalist oppression, struggle of Dalit Bahujans against Brahminical value systems. All these have a lot in common. So in that way, I don't know. So there's some kind of fertility of thought that we might encounter when we try
Yeah.
to engage with everything. Something like this. Yeah.
Right. And these struggles you have really brought out very powerfully using a lot of imagery. I don't know if you have done it consciously, but I found a lot of images of death, and which is also very, even not only in poetry, in real life also, Dalits and transgender people, their reality is so much close to death. They're being beaten to death and, having to commit suicide. Going back to Killing the Shambhuga, I would like to read out two lines that really touched me for the sake of our listeners. Ceiling fans bear a strange fruit, blood on books and blood on paper. So many students who have had to commit suicide, and all the atrocities against Dalits, lynching, everything contained in those two lines very powerfully. And then, sorry, I would also like to bring to the attention of our listeners that while you were talking about feminists, there are a range of poems that Chandramohan has written about Urmila, Draupadi, Hidimbi, Sita. And there is a very, very beautiful poem. I couldn't stop reading it over and over again. It is the poem Sari. Sari is compared to a musical instrument. Oh, that was so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Yeah. So now, could you please throw light on what is your project in the UK, and how is
Yeah.
it going? Yeah.
Yeah, yes. It's not really a project. So the West, the USA and UK have like very established creative writing programs. So so successful completion of a creative writing program will make ourselves eligible to teach in other creative writing programs, and then thereby derive employment. Something like an assistant professor position in as a professor of practice. You can be like assistant professor, creative writing, and teach poetry. Various forms of poetry, aspects of poetry, how to enjoy poetry, how to also they very active writing poetry in which students come up with their drafts and these drafts are discussed in class. So I came to the UK September 2022. So University of East Anglia. So East Anglia supposedly has the most prestigious
Yes,
creative writing program in
yes.
the UK. Yeah, and Norwich is supposed to be UNESCO City of Literature. So recently, our Calicut is also UNESCO City of Literature. Probably you're aware that Bashir, MT, a lot of people used to live in Calicut. Within Kerala, Kozhikode is a very special place for writers. Generally, people say all the aspiring writers come to Kozhikode, and the soil has a lot of valakkur. In Malayalam, they say valakkurula mannana, which means the
Fertile.
soil is very fertile for a literary
Yes.
enthusiast. Something like that is true for Norwich. Norwich is a small city. It's like 2 hours of train drive from London. So once we are at the London airport, Heathrow airport. It's 2 hours of train journey to here. It's like if suppose you landed the train, flight at Trivandrum, your home is at say Kollam or somewhere. It's not so far. So that's one thing. Secondly, uh, what is it? The Western world, right? The UK, US, and all, they have like huge, very big ecosystem of literature. You're a good writer, and then all that you need is here, the UK and the US. So it's just like tremendous exposure every week. You have some programs. You read a lot of new poets who are from the UK but unknown worldwide, who are very very good as canonized writers, something like that. So I have just finished last year my MA program with some kind of merit or something, which is like first class or something like that. And after it's done, I'm now eligible for a assistant professorship job, and I applied to various schools and various universities or so. So I had actually applied for the doctoral program too. So I have been given admission, but the thing is, I'm waiting for the financial aid decision. That's about me. Then also, if those of you who are into writing, the Western, the American, US has a lot of programs who give you like full scholarship. University of Iowa, like I don't know, George Mason University, Columbia University, like many places, there are really good creative writing programs that give you stipends. So I'm sure many of your students are like, aspiring writers, or like they're very good in poetry. Maybe
Yes.
they don't get the right guidance, so like nobody tells them that you should apply to these places, and you might get lucky and get a full scholarship. And you get a stipend to study, just like you get JRF and SRF. You get monthly stipend. You just develop work on your craft, and the world awaits you.
Wow, that's great
Yeah.
news, everybody.
Mm.
You should
Yeah.
all look up creative writing programs. And you're so lucky, Chandramohan. This East Anglia
Yeah.
University Creative Writing Workshop is definitely the best. Very
Yeah.
great writers like Ian McEwan and Julian
Yeah.
Barnes
True.
and
True.
all come from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kazuo Ishiguro,
Kazuo
2017 Nobel
Ishiguro.
Laureate. Yeah,
Correct,
Ishiguro. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet some of them?
No, he never came recently to the campus, but his presence is looming here, is looming large. Like a lot of writers have come here, but then he hasn't come in the last 1 year or 2 years or so when I was here. But his presence looms large here. And also, uh, but even the truth be told, the UK people become writers on their own. And once they are accomplished writers, they give talks in the creative writing program. Only very rarely, students actually study writing. But
Yeah, yeah,
may
yeah.
I might be contradicting myself, but whatever, if there's this kind of system, you can use that. But a lot of people are writers on their own, and then they are now faculty here. But whatever, you can do whatever is like,
After all, it's their native
yeah,
language.
yeah, true. That's true.
Hey, Chandramohan
Yeah,
and everybody
yeah,
in YouTube and Zoom, I want to tell you something that we are doing creative, but
yeah.
it's not writing. We are going to start next month literary trails to the UK. We'll be coming there, Chandramohan.
Wow, great.
Going to, yes, going to all the places where authors lived and authors depicted, and I will be teaching from there. I will be
Mm.
teaching English literature. I will be showing Charles Dickens's house and plays and Yorkshire. I'll be teaching about Bronte's, Dorset. I'll be teaching about Hardy. And not only British literature, I will also be teaching about Indian literature. I'm preparing for that. And this is going to happen from 18th April to 10th May. This is the first time
That's
I'm
great.
announcing it to
Yeah, that's great.
everybody.
That's
This
great.
will be a wonderful experience to actually see these places. You will understand, isn't it, Chandramohan? It's so
Yeah. So our
life-changing.
major difference between a country of the first world and the global south is that the society here has documented their history for the last 600, 700 years. and you can actually see Isaac Newton's notebook in University of Cambridge. You can visit William Shakespeare's residence, a grave and everything. Whatever can be preserved and documented, it's still there. So you can visit the grave of Sylvia Plath,
Yes.
whichever who are our favorite writers. You can visit them. Is Karl Marx, the great
Highgate Cemetery.
thinker and philosopher Karl Marx. It's all here. So yeah, yeah. So thing is, there's something for the global South to learn. I don't know how well we have preserved Kumar Ashan or writers of those
Yeah,
generation.
yeah.
Something like that.
Well, Kumar
Their
Nashan has
their homes or
Ashan
whatever. Yeah,
Sparagam.
yeah. So at least, yeah, I think he's well documented. Well preserved, like whatever that is, honored. That's a good thing. But then it should have been the same, much more extensively in the global South. It would have helped us, the future generations learn from, inherit the cultural history of the literary history that we inherit. Yeah, true.
Yes.
And it's very strong here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chandramohan, now that you have mentioned the opportunities
Yeah.
for creative writers in these various courses, I'm sure a lot of our audience here in Zoom would like to talk to you. I am unmuting you. Please, one by one, not everybody together, one by one, please talk to Chandramohan sir, and you can ask him more about whatever he has talked about. And also, thank him for this brilliant session. He has talked about so much that pertains to all that we do learn in our courses and departments. Did you apply to a lot of places, or did you just apply to East Anglia? You have muted yourself, Chandramohan.
In the UK, I had applied only to East Anglia, but the US, I did apply to University of Iowa, etc. There's something called University of Iowa. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But in our generation, in the generation of the students that are here right now, I think it's achievable to get a good place with a proper scholarship, and then you can you can develop your craft and be a good writer.
Would anybody like to talk? Sophia had unmuted herself.
Good evening, sir.
Santosh
good
is
evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. It's really a very good platform for us. I am also a budding writer. I write poetry, but we don't get much information about these things. As I am from engineering background. I am currently studying English literature under Kalyani Vallath ma'am. So these things we don't have the surrounding or the environment for poetry, or we don't get the right kind of guidance. And so about these creative writing programs, can you please elaborate about these things?
Yeah. So I think if my immediate suggestion would be just Google MA Creative Writing, Poetry, UEA, and UEA. So you will get the the application portal. What is just needed is your writing sample as well as your statement of purpose. Statement of purpose is like, what would you like to get out of this program? What's the vision, kind of thing. It's like a 700-word essay sort of thing, and just produce just a manuscript of just a word file of just 10 or 12 poems. That'll be enough for the application. And I can just, if you just email me or something, I can give you like other institutions in the UK, like Goldsmith University or Newcastle, etc., who have very good creative writing programs. At least 5 or 6 universities have really good programs. So you could apply to them. So if you get accepted, the thing is like just like so many students are coming to the UK, paying a lot of money. So the tuition fees is quite hefty. So as a result, you should apply to various scholarships that are available in the university, or the Commonwealth Scholarship, Chevening Scholarship, whatever that is. And it could be quite a tedious process, but still you will be rewarded with this opportunity to come to the UK, be here, get the exposure, become a better writer and more of all.
Right.
So it's just that you need to just have your writing sample and the statement of purpose, and it's pretty easy to apply. But if you don't get it this year, like like as your writing evolves and as you read more and more and practice more and more, one day you'll get selected to one of those places. I'm optimistic. Yeah.
Don't give up then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Chandramohan, a lot of people are saying it was a very informative and
Yeah.
great session. Alina Babu is asking, how do subaltern writers consciously place themselves in the influence of certain cultures?
Yeah, so I think people who are very engaging, engaging in their writing, so they will explore the history. They'll explore explore the history. They'll explore the nitty-gritties of the struggle they are engaged in. So and they'll situate themselves in terms of the priorities they set for themselves. For example, an intelligent feminist woman will have her priorities set against higher autonomy for her in all aspects of life. Say wherever there is patriarchal double standards applied to her life, she would fight against that. The same goes for every every person who's on a mission to improve his or her own life. So in that way, it's part of their uh, you know uh, it's part of their like it's how they develop their consciousness in terms of what issues and how to take stands on these issues. That's how they, I believe, consciously place themselves in cultures of struggle. Yeah.
Well, I have a
So,
question to ask you,
yeah,
Chandramohan,
yeah,
once
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah,
Sharan Kumar Limbale had talked about charting out an alternate Dalit aesthetics.
yeah, yeah,
Well, at the beginning of Dalit literature and its coming of age in the 1970s, 80s, etc., it
yeah,
was
yeah.
highly relevant. Do you think it is necessary for Dalit writers to stand apart, or should everybody be writing about these issues, mainstream from the margins kind of thing?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So, yeah. So that's an interesting question. So what I felt was, so there is this saying among doctors also, like you are what you eat or something like that. So in that way, if for a writer, his lived experience or his social circumstances might determine what he would write and what kind of aesthetics or what kind of craft he is endowed with. So that's one thing. So that could be the reason why a separate Dalit aesthetics. There is a need for something like that. That's one thing. Secondly, uh, people who are so there is a lot of contentious issue. There is a lot of contention on who can write and what, and like how if a writer can write about something that he or she has not experienced, and thereby he or she may be appropriating the voices of people who are enduring that. For example, if you look at the queer community, if you look at the transgenders, people like you and me who might not identify as a transgender, if we write on those issues, it's like undermining their voice or something, like our rendering of their situation may not be accurate or quote unquote politically correct with respect to the general consensus within the queer community. So when a person of privilege writes on issues that are at the core of being subaltern or being marginalized, I know that there is a can of worms, or like there is some kind of uh, extreme care and caution that one should exercise, being responsible to our own soul, something like that.
Well, Shivani has a
Yeah,
question to ask.
yeah,
Shivani, please
yeah.
speak.
Hello, good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir. So
Good
I
evening.
have recently been going through this Dalit studies, subaltern studies, and so on, and I have been very much fascinated by all the different like subgenres available within this Dalit literature genre. So one of this thing that I came across yesterday was threefold marginalization of women in Dalit literature that has been seen in works of Bama like Karuku. And I cannot get much of the information regarding this from the internet or so on. I searched it and I got a very few things to know, like how women are being discriminated, prejudiced on the basis of their gender, on the basis of their caste, and then again they are converted into Christians. So even in the church or even in the religious places they are being discriminated. So it would be really nice if you can shed some light to this topic. I would really love to know more about this thing.
Yeah, so I believe there are a lot of narratives of Dalit women, like the autobiography of C.K. Janu, who was involved in Adivasi struggles, uh, etc. So I believe the onus is on you to read more on like Bama or whoever have written all these stuff. And like I believe when Dalit women write, it will be even more powerful compared to what Dalit men have written, because they have endured much more, or they are endowed with a very intersectional perspective of simultaneously being oppressed by also the class by economic standards, and also through, even if you convert to another religion, there is always a separate category of being a Dalit Christian. So it'll be like very interesting. I think there'll be more and more women writing out. So in Kerala, if you since we both may be Malayalis, so I believe that you should read. Her name is C.K. Janu. Her autobiography. It's called Mother Forest or so. The
Yes.
translation is already published. So the thing is, you should look closely into that. And yeah, so I believe more and more women, more and more Dalit women will come out with their autobiographies. If you know, there is this lady by name her book is called Coming Out as Dalit. It was adapted into a web series.
Yashika
I
Dutt.
just Yeah,
Yashika.
Yashika Dutt. Yeah, Yashika Dutt. So her book was like a Sahitya Academy Yuva Puraskar winner. And there's a new edition of her book published recently. So it's like a woman who has like studied, like worked hard on academics and earned a master's degree from Columbia University, and she's like a well-established writer with a lot of essays in major magazines. And she has this important memoirs, which is called Coming Out as Dalit. Also, there are a lot of other texts similar to these. Ants Among Elephants. It's by Sujata Gidla. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of such texts now. So I think our generation in this 2020s, there's going to be a lot of very good Dalit intervention in English language, both autobiographical as well as very formally innovative, very experimental stuff too. I think should
Yes.
look forward to all that. Yeah, yeah. And the
So
internet is a good source of information on all these. If you just Google all these names, you'll get like reviews on our book. Even you might even get the PDF online, though it's
And
illegal to download. Yeah.
we will also bring Bama to India Writes Back
Yeah,
session.
great.
So
Yeah,
you
good,
can
good.
ask her
Yeah,
directly.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Sir, I need I want to know that what importance or what relevance this thing holds, that Christian converted Christian people are being marginalized inside the church. They are being discriminated. What relevance does it hold in today's world?
Shivani, this is a
I
question
think,
you should be asking Bama ma'am actually.
yeah, my opinion is that there is an interesting poem by a poet S. Joseph, in which he says, because he is it says the crux of the poem is that the Dalit soul is neither accepted in Hinduism, no, Hinduism, which is like a hierarchical Brahmanism, or in Christianity. It's like the caste is like a monster that crosses your path wherever you go. Even when you immigrate to a new faith, even when you convert to a new faith, there is still caste, especially in Kerala, and. Yeah, like even if you're like atheist or something, like if you're in a rationalist movement, there's some kind of cartoon I've seen somewhere in which two people like talk to each other and say like point fingers at the third person and say he is also an atheist but from a different caste, something like that. Or in the communist parties there is a rampant caste system. So people say even if they are comrade, people identify themselves as caste, something like that. Yeah.
Professor Soni has raised his hand. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I would like to ask something to Chandramohan sir, because I started teaching Dalit literature just a year ago. So, see, I would like to know whether we could actually qualify Dalit literature with a particular, what shall I say, what is the hallmark of Dalit literature? How is it distinct from several other subaltern literatures? perhaps we would, of course, speak about Dalit consciousness. But what is the hallmark of the Dalit consciousness? Could you say something about it?
I believe Dalit literature is literature produced, written by authors whom the society. Yeah. So Dalit literature is like the literature produced by authors whom the society brands as Dalit. The people who are who self-identify as Dalit. So, but the term Dalit is a very politically charged term, and there is a certain degree of self assertion when the term Dalit is uttered. In contrast to banned words like Harijan or like scheduled caste. No, scheduled caste are not banned, but some other words which were like what is it used by others to describe the Dalit people. So first of all, the word Dalit itself has a kind of assertion in that. That's one thing. Secondly, Dalit literature is something written by people who identify themselves as Dalit, or what the society calls them as, who are designated as Dalit. So anyone can write, and any irrespective birth caste identity, anyone can write anti-caste literature. Just like Perumal Murugan, who's a privileged caste person, but he has written extensively on honor killings. He has written on intercaste love. He has written about many aspects that it's about caste, how caste haunts even privileged caste people. Caste is a kind of is a kind of lack of freedom or something like that that haunts the whole of humanity. Just like Ambedkar had said, when Indians emigrate to the rest of the world, caste would become a global problem, something like that. So that's about it. I think if it's my personal opinion that Dalit literature will have two aspects to it. One is that the person who is writing this, he has first-hand experience of what it means to be at the receiving end of the caste hierarchy or caste spectrum. Secondly, it is perceived as per the Ambedkarite ideals. This text or whatever he or she or they write are perceived as anti-Brahminical, or empowering the lot of the lesser privilege in terms of caste hierarchy. So I think these two aspects could be the hallmark. So it has to come from within the community. One. Secondly, it should be perceived as anti-Brahminical or progressive as per the moral compass of today. Yeah, thank you.
In relation to what Sony asked, Sandra has asked a question in the chat box. When the subaltern writer writes, is there an issue of authenticity? Won't the subaltern discourses be influenced by ideologies of the elite?
Yeah, true. That's it. So that's life to be lived. That's the crux of life to be lived. It's like saying, something like, I don't know if so for example, like majority of the Dalits might be believers in Hindu religion, which oppresses them, or maybe some women might internalize notions of patriarchy or something like that, and then practice misogyny with the same gusto as extremely toxic or patriarchal men. So, or I don't know, the lot of what is it, anti-queer what is it, comedy or like whatever that is, which is like very hurtful to the queer community, are enjoyed by queer people of the queer community themselves, something like that. It's like it's about the human condition. Unaware of ourselves, we might what is it, we might have an adulation towards fairer skin or something, which is like, I don't know, that's how life is. It's true today that majority of the oppressors might be like nurturing in themselves value systems that are detrimental to their own socio-political religious liberation.
Yeah, I
I
was
like to listen to
saying
Kalangana.
what Homi Baba said as hybridity. The post-colonial writer who writes about post-colonial India or Africa is using the weapons of English language and literature. So that is what makes us hybrid, I guess.
True.
And then Nikki says, it's about the creative writing programs. Two people have asked, are there any such programs being offered by these universities which are self-paced or available to enroll online?
Oh, there are a few. I believe there is something at Metropolitan I can send you the link. I can email Kalyani ma'am
Chandramohan, if
later.
any of our people in the
Yeah.
audience, they want to know more about it, if they contact me, can I direct them to you?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Please email us questions. I can, reply all those, questions with the proper links to those universities and all, and you could apply. Yeah.
Archie Jain also wants to know how to apply for universities abroad, but I think that is also part of what we talked about just now. We'll look into it, Archie. We'll try to help you with it. Right.
Good.
Amisha has even written a poem for you to read. I met my true self. It is not me, you instead. It is you who reflects me. Truly no one but I expect thee. And the fact I can't pretend, it is you whom I depend. You drain my faults and purify me. It's you at this very moment that defines me.
I think a lot of literature could be, like seeing ourselves in the text or something like that. Getting our experience reflected in words of someone else's, maybe.
Yeah. A lot of people want to know about how to apply for PhD in foreign universities. That's a totally different topic. We'll organize another talk for that. So I hope you liked our session, Chandramohan. We loved it,
Very
all
much,
of
very
us.
much. Yeah.
We wish you all the best. We look forward to more and more poetry and even novels and short stories and everything from you. Now that you have done the creative writing program, I'm sure you will be in the landscape of world literature very soon. I'm wishing you all the best from all of us. Isn't it, everybody?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Everybody is thanking us. Thank you very much. I
Thank you so
think it's time to end the session. It's almost an hour. We are deeply indebted to you for this time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.